This is episode 80 of Our Modern Heritage, your resource for navigating your family culture. I'm your host, Jodi Chafee. I'm excited to share this episode with you. I want to share with you my latest epiphany about what family culture means to me. So I know I've talked a lot about family culture being like a vehicle, and I want to spin off of that analogy a little bit more because I've learned that there are these 6 components of navigating your family culture that make you successful. And so to start out, we have the vehicle itself, right? And that's our identity. I think that when we think about our vehicles in the literal sense of, the cars that we drive, some of us are minivan families, some of us are SUV families, some of us are crossover families. There is an identity that we associate with our vehicle. And so that's where we start, is who are we? What does our family identify with? What do we value? What is the most important thing to us? What is the purpose of this vehicle that we're in? And that's just like the beginning. That's just like an overview of those things. Because, when we start our families, we all anticipate or we expect that we're in this for forever, right? So that's our destination, right? So we have this idea of where we're going, right? But then as we get started, we maybe coast into that destination, or we think we know where we're going. Like, how hard is it to love each other and, live our values and things like that? But then we find ourselves in uncharted territory. We're like, wait a minute, this path doesn't work for our growing family. So what do we do now? And we have to make adjustments. So these are the 6 components that you need, right? You need to start out with a destination, and that's actually your mission statement. So when your family comes together, you need to figure out where you're going, like your ultimate where you're going, what you want to accomplish. Okay, that's your mission statement, and that's your destination. And then you need to have a vision. So that's a little bit different from your destination, because a vision it's like when you find yourself in uncharted territory, you need to check in with that vision to figure out how to reorient yourself to where you're going and how to get there. So your mission is where you're going. Your vision is how to get there. And so that's like a GPS for this journey of navigating our family culture. So your vision is your GPS, because that's your global positioning system, right? So like when you're lost or you don't actually know exactly how to get where you're going, you pull out your phone, you put in you look at where you are on the map, and you can see where you are from this satellite. And in our family culture, we have our vision. And that's how we check in and figure out where are we in this path, and then rechart how to get there and the course on how to get there. We need to have that vision. And the vision is cultivated by saying, okay, where do we want to be in 10 years? What does that look like in 10 years? What does it look like in 20 years? What does it look like in 30 years? What does that look like in 40 or 50 years? What will we be along this path, along this journey of reaching our destination? When we're traveling, we need to be able to orient ourselves to true north. When we need to be able to know, like, even on your GPS, it has a compass, right? It's telling you which way is north, south, east, west. You need to be able to know what's up and what's down. And that's where your values come in, your core values. And your core values are a little bit different from just the things that you value, okay? Because like, I value seatbelts, but that's because my core value is safety. Or, I value honesty, telling the truth, because my core value is honesty and integrity, right? That's your compass in navigating this journey, figuring out, what is your true north. And these are important because a lot of times, our life questions our values, and the things that we encounter, they question our true values. And the reality is that a lot of times our core values are kind of like in a hierarchy. Like I was talking about with Kristen Hodson in the last episode, we talked about that one of our core values is virtue or sexual purity, but the more important core value is our relationship with our children. And so, we don't want to shame our children for the choices that they make, the mistakes that they feel bad about. We need to pull them in and talk with them and value them as a person above anything else, and be able to talk about these things, because that's the only way to truly uphold all of our values, is that we have that core value of love and relationship and unity in our family that allows us to stay strong. So that's your core values. That's your compass on your journey. So those are the three most important things. But then we get on our journey and we come up against, well, first of all, with our vehicle, it needs maintenance, right? We need to be able to fuel our vehicles and get the tires rotated and replaced and, you know what I mean? So we need to maintain our vehicles. What that translates to in family culture is we need to have open communication. We need to have family meetings. We need to come together and talk about where we are on this journey. We need to be able to have, maybe family retreats or vacations. The things that make family fun are also the maintenance. That's your fuel. Healthy activities or, however you translate that. The things that we do together are our maintenance, our stories, our family history, these things that strengthen our family culture and our identity. That's the maintenance and the fuel that we need for our family culture. And then along the way, we hit roadblocks, detours, obstacles, construction on the street, crazy drivers, these things that might set us off course or divert us onto a different track. And those are inevitable things in life and part of this journey of raising a family. It's going to throw us off track if, our kid gets diagnosed with diabetes or have an eating disorder or depression or anxiety or something happens and we suddenly are struck with an insurmountable level of grief or trauma. Okay, those things are part of life. What I'm proposing is that the other thing that we need is a roadmap. We need strategies for anticipating these roadblocks and detours and construction and sidetracks, because they're not necessarily that. A detour, it still gets us to our destination, even if in that time, it can be frustrating. It can be frustrating when that detour takes us down a winding road and it sets us back on our journey, it feels like. But that is part of the journey. And we can't come up against a roadblock or a detour and throw up our arms and go, you know what? I can't do this. I give up. You can't do that. We can't do that, right? Sometimes it can be tempting. I'm going to hand it to you that can be a temptation, but life has to go on. We have to figure out and have a strategy in place for what we're going to do when these kinds of things arise, because they will. That's life. That's my story. I'm going to share my story now. When Michael and I got married, of course, we knew our destination, right? We were in this for forever, and we have a great relationship. We had strong values in place, and we thought we had strategies in place for maintaining these things. I mean, we mostly did, but we didn't have a vision. And, it all really came to a head after 8 years living in an area that we hated, and we were miserable. We were depressed. Michael was underemployed, and he had finished his graduate degree right at the height of the recession. And I finished my undergraduate degree at that time too. And, we just didn't really have, we hopped on some train in our journey. We weren't in control. We got on somebody else's vehicle. They were driving our destination, and we were like, is this the right thing? Maybe we should get off. I don't know. This doesn't feel right, but it does, because this is our only choice. And so maybe we should just stick this out and see what happens. Then we moved to Richmond, and things seemed like they were going to be better, but they actually got kind of worse. And it came to a head when our house flooded, that I mentioned in a previous episode, when a pipe burst in our upstairs bathroom in the middle of the night, and the water was literally gushing. It was like a waterfall. I have videos of a waterfall streaming down the back door, like the French doors of the house. And I mean, we were renting, and so everything really fell on our landlord, but we were displaced from the house while they did repairs, and we ended up bearing the brunt of the expense of getting out of the house. We went and stayed with our parents. It was so hard to recover from that. I didn't know how to recover from that. It was just like, after everything that we'd been going through for the last 8 or 9 years. And this was back in 2016 when the flood happened. I think psychologically I snapped, and I didn't know how I was going to recover from this. And I was just done. At the same time that I was done with that life, something sparked inside of me that I was like, this is wrong. Like, something is so wrong with our family. Like, we're miserable, even though we loved each other. We loved our children. We were doing a lot of things together to strengthen our family. And in that sense, in that regard, we were happy, but there was something so off too about our life that our destination was totally blurry. I mean, we knew we were in it for forever. Don't get me wrong about that. I guess then it wasn't really necessarily the destination as it was the vision. We couldn't see 5, 10, 15, 20 years into the future. All we could see was misery and frustration because Michael was underemployed, or he had a job that he hated in an industry that was soul sucking, and he was just really miserable. But I mean, he'd applied to so many jobs, and the message God was telling us was, no, you have to stick this out, and no other job is going to even call you back. Sorry. And so it was like, okay, well, what now? What do we do? And that's when I got the inspiration to start this podcast and to start exploring what family culture is. And in this journey, I've talked to so many experts and authors and these people who, they have a lot of things figured out, and what they're talking about is strategies. Like, all of this time, everything in every episode has been about the different strategies for applying our family culture or navigating our family culture. That's what this podcast has been about. And so I've been learning that we didn't have any strategies in place. We didn't have our vision in place. We weren't necessarily living intentionally. We hopped on somebody else's vehicle and then they just kind of kept passing us off to somebody else's vehicle, and we never had real control over our situation. And so that's why, in April, Michael decided to leave his job finally. I mean, it's been 3 years, almost 3 years. We are finally at a place where we're ready to get in our own vehicle and start navigating this whole family culture thing on our own, because I've realized and I've learned we have a mission. We have a destination for this journey, and the vision that we're cultivating is coming together, and we're starting to have a vision that's our own vision, not somebody else's, path that it's like, okay, keep working in the corporate world, keep trying to save your money so that you can retire someday. Well, that wasn't happening for us. We were living above our means and not by choice. We never wanted to have debt or anything like that. But, with life happened, and student debt and survival of living in one of the most expensive areas of the nation. And so we had to live above our means, and it was really depressing because that was all we could see for our future. You guys, that's like the worst part of it all. But that's why we're taking our life into our own hands. We've created our own mission, our own vision. We are cultivating and carving out our true core values, not anybody else's. That's what an intentional family culture is all about. And now we're cultivating, and I've been studying these strategies now for 3 years of how to anticipate and navigate these roadblocks and barriers and detours, because we have had a lot of roadblocks and detours in this life, in our family. And that's what I've been working on these 3 years, is all of these strategies for overcoming these things. And that's like a roadmap. When we have to get out the roadmap, that's when we know that we're definitely on uncharted territories, right? We have to get out the roadmap to map out a different way, a different path to cope with this detour. And that's where I come to a head here, is that I've created a course that I've mentioned is the Coping Strategies course. And it's the strategies for overcoming the roadblocks and detours of our family culture. And I've broken it up into 3 components. So we have self-care and boundaries, because that's where so much of our stress and struggles are stemming from, is that we don't take the time to take care of ourselves, and we don't establish clear boundaries. And so there's a big chunk of the course that is understanding what those things are and how to establish them, and the habits that we can create. So that's step 1. And then there's the constructive strategies, how to channel our energy towards something construction when we feel stressed out or when we're struggling. Because ultimately what we're seeking for is a boost in the happy hormones in our brains, right? And it's really easy to pick up our phones and get that chemical boost really quickly, because that's what these manufacturers and designers and engineers and programmers have done so well, is they've created these things that give us that instant boost in the chemicals in our brains that help us to feel happy again. But it's like a drug, because we become addicted to the phone because it's so quick and then it's short-lived. So the constructive strategies that I'm recommending are things that give you that boost in like a slower burn. It's something that is more fulfilling because it's constructive and helpful, rather than things that are addictive and short-lived. So that's the second section of the course. The third section of the course is about recovery, because that's really what it's all about. And that's where we fall short. The day-to-day grind, we don't allow ourselves the time and the space to recover. Our kids come home from school. The first thing we do is go, "How was your day? Do you have any homework?" And they don't get a chance to decompress. We come home from work and we have to do chores. We have to prepare dinner. We have to get our kids to do their homework. We have to, it's never ending. But each day we can find ways to recover. And then on top of that, we have seasons. We aren't always going to be able to accomplish everything in every season. When you bring home a baby from the hospital, that is not a season to start remodeling your house. I mean, if that's what you're doing and you have to do it, okay. But generally speaking, we need time to recover after that's in that season of our lives. My mom always told me that it took her 2 years after every baby to spring back and be herself again. And my mom had 7 children, and many of us were less than 2 years apart. That's saying a lot about my mom. That's the season. We need to be able to embrace the season that we're in and allow ourselves time to recover during that season. So that's section 3 of the course. It's going to be available for you this week. I'm going to launch that course this week, and I'm excited to announce it. So if you are not subscribed to my email list, go to homeandfamilyculture.com, and you can scroll down about halfway down, or you can go into the start here little button at the top of the screen, and you can opt in for weekly strategy calls that I'm going to start doing. So on Fridays at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to start doing a live video conference in Zoom, and that's the platform that I use for my interviews. And so you can join in with audio or video or both or neither, and you can just listen in to the conversation. But we'll be talking about the strategies that came up in the episode that week, or we'll be talking about the strategies that I teach about in the course. And it's a 30-day course. It's like a challenge. Like each day there's a challenge to try a new strategy, and then you can come into the Facebook group that I've set up that you can talk about it, and we can help and support each other in these strategies. Or we can say, that strategy didn't really work for me, or I don't like it, but this other one I really liked. And that's okay too. Because there's, everybody is different, and your family culture is unique. And the strategies that work for me might not work for you, and that's okay. The purpose of this course is to introduce you to a variety of strategies to find what works for your family. So make sure you go to homeandfamilyculture.com and opt in for those calls, and then you'll get updates on the podcast and updates when the course will be available and access to those strategy calls every week. Thank you so much for listening. This has been an incredible journey, and I'm so thankful for the things that I've learned, the people that I've talked to and have had the privilege to interview on this podcast. And for those of you who have reached out to me and told me that these topics have impacted you, and I want to hear more from you. So please go and opt in to the calls, to the emails, and reach out on Facebook, my Facebook page. That's at Family Culture Podcast on Facebook, and on Instagram at Family Culture Podcast as well. Thank you again for listening. And remember that Mother Teresa once said that if you want to change the world, go home and love your family.